30 years after the infamous Waco siege, I'm going to determine from a rare interview whether David Koresh, the leader of the Branch Dividian movement who was sieged in Waco, Texas, was he a psychopath or was he a sociopath? Dr. Chris reacts.
Do you consider yourself a prophet?
Let me say this much. I consider myself someone who's found grace in the sight of Christ. And if I can be a prophet to you by giving you a study about the Bible, then yeah, I'm a prophet.
David Koresh was the child of a single mother who had him at 14, spent some time in East Texas living with his grandmother, who took him to a Seventh-day Adventist church. The Seventh-day Adventists are a religious group that focus a lot of their attention on the end times, when Christ will return and there will be a great conflict and the believers will go to heaven and everyone else will suffer and go to hell. Well, there was an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventists called the Branch Dividians.
The Branch Dividians were founded in the 1950s and built their new Mount Carmel Center on the outskirts of Waco, Texas.
By the early 1990s, David Koresh had taken complete control over the Waco compound.
He said he'd had a vision and he was the Messiah come back and was the figure that was going to bring the end of the world.
The followers started buying into it. They really believed that he was who was being talked about in the Bible. He was the new Jesus.
He was a very exciting figure, and he had a photographic recall of the Bible. So he could take you to Daniel and Isaiah and then Revelation and back again in a way that just dazzled people.
See, that's the thing. That's what makes it tricky when it comes to David Koresh, between determining if he's a psychopath versus a sociopath. The thing is with psychopaths, and psychopaths and sociopaths both share a lack of guilt and remorse, but the psychopaths, they really have an inability to have real relationships. They have an inability to form emotional attachments. The thing is with sociopaths, though, is that they do have that charm and they do have the ability to form the emotions and emotional attachments, but a lot of their emotional attachments are unstable.
They said unstable.
They are fleeting. They do have emotional attachments, but they're fleeting. And so Koresh did have emotional attachments with people, but it was to his own benefit. He had, married someone who was 12, I believe. He was dating someone who was 14. He had a relationship with someone who was 14. He had multiple wives.
Dude, what the heck, man?
He had sex with many people. There was an Oprah interview that was talking about, that had the wife, the mother and the daughter. Both were wives of Koresh.
These two women were both married to one of the most notorious men in the news today, Waco cult leader David Koresh. Not only were they both a part of his harem, Janine and Robin Bonds are also mother and daughter.
So he does have that ability to form emotional attachments with people, to form relationships, but there's also that inability to have that behavior with psychopathic behavior as far as true emotional attachments. So one could say, was those attachments that Koresh formed, were they authentic? Were any of them authentic? I wasn't there to know, but at the same time, if you see his track record as far as just so many people who he was in relationship with, and for his own good, even getting to the point of causing people to get divorced and saying that having sex with him is like getting closer to God. Is that a true emotional attachment? It really, it's really difficult to really measure as far as the truthness. I would say that I don't see any true emotional attachment there, especially convincing people to leave their marriages in order to have sex with him. That's very cult-like when it comes to that power struggle. But narcissism is a really big play into psychopathy as well. When it comes to sociopathy, there's lying, there's deception, but narcissism is a really big thing within psychopathy. So it is a really interesting dynamic, because even if you think about it from a standpoint of him kind of sleeping his way or getting into a relationship in order to become the leader of the Branch Dividians, that shows that was intended from the very beginning. So narcissism and manipulative behavior, superficial charm, those are very psychopathic tendencies. So I would favor more of the psychopathy when it comes to that. Psychopaths tend to be successful as well. Of course, we saw the success that he had as being the leader of the Branch Dividians. And so, yeah, it seems like it's more of the psychopathic route than the sociopathic route, because like I said, even he was in a relationship. He was a handyman. He was introduced to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He ended up having a relationship with Lois Rodin, who was the wife of Benjamin Rodin, who basically took over from Victor Hutev when they splintered off. And so it definitely seemed like there was something going on for a while. It was very calculated. Psychopaths has that very ability to have that calculated behavior. So I have to lean more toward the psychopathic route on this situation here. Hey, by the way, look, if you like what you hear, if you like these analyses from a standpoint of a forensic psychologist, hey, go ahead and hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like the one you see right now.
He taught that if you were going to die for God, you had to kill for God. And that,
see, there's the manipulative behavior, man. That's very psychopathic. Very, very psychopathic.
Outside evil forces of the world were going to come in, and they were going to have to fight, and they were going to go up in a fiery battle. They're laugh riot.
Us versus them. Very cult-like. It's one of the biggest components of cult-like behavior. It becomes a big love bombing fest to bring people in. It's that manipulative behavior to promise a better you, to promise a more healthier version. It's very charming. It's very alluring. It becomes very apocalyptic. That's very cult-like behavior, but the cult leader has the ability to manipulate people's emotions to create the charm. And then the apocalyptic behavior is basically the buy-in. And basically you're love bombing people, and then you buy them in and saying, it's an us versus them. That's where the, us versus them, us against the world, they're out to get us type of thing. And then the apocalyptic mindset, the apocalyptic presentation comes when we saw that in Jonestown. We see that here when it comes to, we need to die for the cause, basically. And we saw that even with Marshall Applewhite with the Heaven's Gate call.
There's a madman living in Waco. He's bowing his knee to bear. Won't you help, Mr. Sheriff?
The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, after a months-long investigation, was going in with a major operation to arrest Koresh for gun violations and search the compound for evidence of illegal weapons. In their search warrant, they included allegations of child abuse. He's sleeping with underage children, and he may be leading them in a suicide pact. The problem was that Koresh and his group had been tipped off. So they had an hour to prepare, and when the ATF pulled up to this remote compound on a barren plain, the Davidians were ready for them. I mean, they had enough weaponry for a small army and enough weaponry to take on the federal government, which they did.
So it sounds like they're firing now. And he says that y'all are making the move and they're going to defend themselves to the last man. So
see, there you go. There's the apocalyptic presentation there. And interesting enough, guess how old Koresh was when he died? He was 33 years old when he died. And so that is the messianic, I'm the Messiah, I'm the prophet, and things like that. That is that just inflation, that grandiose sense of self, that very huge narcissistic inflation. Again, that leads more toward the psychopathic route, that narcissistic type of mentality. And his upbringing caused a lot of that. So when you think of psychopathy, basically, you think of a disruption to the amygdala. And the amygdala basically has the ability to react to stimuli, fear, threat, things like that. And stuff like that just really, it really leans me more to, again, the psychopathic route, because it became like, we're not coming out, we're going to stay in here. The sense of threat just became very, very little. And it even got to the point of saying we're doing this for the cause, which is still very, very narcissistic, very alluring, very charming. It's just, again, it's making me lean more toward the psychopathic route.
Advise him that they cease fire, the will cease fire. We're trying to stop the ambulance. All right. We're trying to stop the ambulance. Oh, please. They're trying to stop the ambulance now. Hold your fire. Please hold your fire. 4
agents were dead. 17 were wounded. A number of Davidians, including Koresh, were wounded. 2 were actually killed by ATF gunfire.
Well, I've been hit through. Watch out. Okay. I've been hit through the stomach, and I think it broke my pelvic bone.
There was a point the head of the hostage rescue team said, well, I'm going to bring in an Abrams tank. And so literally they ordered an Abrams tank to come up. The problem with that was that if you are a Davidian looking at this army amassed outside with the biggest tank in the U.S. arsenal, it looks like David Koresh's prophecies are coming true. Koresh,
which causes him to be even more inflated of his ego. Like, he thought that he was the Messiah. He thought that he was the prophet. He told people that within his compound. And this stuff to him, it just verifies what he was prophesied, from the very beginning. This just verifies what he told his followers from the very beginning. That's where cult leaders and psychopathic behavior does. It just further feeds his ego of saying, well, they're out again. They're out against us. They're out, going against us. They're out for us. And this is the reason why my prophecy is being fulfilled. And that can convince the Branch Dividians to further lock into Koresh, because wow, he is right. The Messiah has spoken. He's correct. They are out to get us. And so just further inflates his ego.
Taught his followers, and they fervently believed the only way to get to heaven was to go with him through this fiery ending where they knew that they were going to die.
When they come busting in on my door with guns drawn and pointed in the air, and someone fired me, then I'm going to lay down and die for anybody. This just ain't going to happen.
After a 51-day siege, federal agents bring it to an end by driving a tank straight into the compound.
See, that was it was a huge lack of empathy that he was showing there, and even toward his followers. He's so non-empathetic toward his followers that he says, okay, look, this is just a big grand scheme to make me right, to make me the Messiah, to make my prophecy fulfilled. And all these people that are coming with me are just pawns in my big old grandiose plan of inflating my ego and exercising my narcissism. And the more people who buy into that strokes his ego, the more it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And he starts to continue to believe the picture that he set for himself, that he gave himself.
News networks from all over the world beam their live coverage to millions of households.
At one point, we were watching TV, and that's when the fire started.
We have what appears to be a fire going on right now, raging at the Branch Dividian compound.
And we were watching it live, and we were all aghast that that happened. And that, you know, all the military presence and everything that was happening there.
You had this national trauma aired live on national television. You knew when you watched that fire, you were watching more than 70 people, including more than 24 children, dying in that fire right over your lunch hour.
And that's just tragic. I mean, it's just absolutely tragic. And again, you know, even from the final moments of Waco, of the siege, that there were children that died in the siege. And according to someone like Koresh, who I believe was shot in the forehead, point blank in the forehead, that was for the cause. That was for the cause. This is just just solidifies his big master plan of they're out to get us and we've got to go for the cause. Whatever that cause was, if he even believed his own cause, or if he just wanted people to be a part of his big master plan to feed his own ego that will never be quenched. That's the thing about narcissistic behavior. That ego will never be quenched. And we see that with people who are big leaders who have that ego, who have that narcissism, like a Koresh. Koresh is a prime example of someone who has that inflated ego, that the more the people buy into that, the more he continues to, I mean, that just stokes the flame. It starts adding more to the flame. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he starts to really believe his own hype, nearly to the point of no return. That's the reason why a lot of times people say people with narcissistic personality disorder, it just gets to the point where they feel like it's a lot of clinicians believe that it's the point of no return, because you start to believe your own hype so much. It's just hard to reverse that. I've got some thoughts on that from a clinical level as far as just if it can be reversed, but a lot of people in my field believe that it can't be reversed. But as we see, you can see why people will believe that it can't be reversed, because he was just so bought into his own hype as a leader of this movement. And people were to this day, people still co-sign and support what he did. So is he a psychopath? Is he a sociopath? There's elements of both that can be argued, but I would say that I believe that David Koresh was more on the psychopathic route than the sociopathic route, because he was very successful. He had a lack of empathy, which goes both ways. But he can pretend to form relationships, but he's not really forming relationships, at least long term. He has those abilities like manipulation, superficial charm, and things like that to make it really seem as if he's more the psychopathic route than the sociopathic route. Thanks for watching. Be blessed. Peace.